The morning sun filtered lazily through the blinds as I sipped burnt diner coffee from a chipped mug, scanning the used car inventory on my clipboard. Life in Crescent Hollow moved with the sleepy predictability of a town with more cows than people. At 46, I had my routines locked down like lug nuts on a tire. Wake up. Drive to the lot. Sell a few sedans. Go home to the wife. Repeat. My wife, Camille, had always been the more animated half of our marriage. Blonde and sharp-eyed, with a laugh that turned heads at barbecues, she'd spent the last few years working part-time at the community college bookstore, filling her days with yoga classes and Pinterest recipes that somehow never turned out like the photos. We'd been married 18 years. Raised 2 boys now off at college. There had been rough patches, sure, but we made it. Or so I thought. It began one Tuesday evening. I came home expecting meatloaf and an old episode of Murder, she wrote. Instead, the moment I stepped through the door, I found Camille pacing the kitchen, her voice already halfway to a scream. "You don't love me," she accused, arms flailing with theatrical fervor. "You don't do anything for me anymore." I stood dumbfounded, still holding my keys. "Camille, what's going on? Are you okay?" She went on about expensive gifts she never got, about her friends and their designer handbags. That I didn't see her anymore. That maybe I never had. My gut told me something was off. She'd never cared about labels before. She used to brag about our frugal lifestyle, clipping coupons like medals of honor. This wasn't hormones. It wasn't stress. This was something else. Still, I chalked it up to a bad day and said nothing. Maybe she was just tired. Maybe she'd seen one too many social media posts from those Botoxed country club wives. But the storm didn't pass. It gathered. The next incident came when I stopped home midday to grab a wrench from the garage. I wasn't supposed to be there. The dealership was only 5 minutes away, but it was enough for me to catch Camille in a state that made the hair on the back of my neck stand up. Tight leggings. Messy hair. Flushed cheeks. She jumped when I came in. "Oh, hey." I was just doing a workout video with my trainer. I raised an eyebrow. "Since when do you train during lunch?" "Trying something new," she said, already fidgeting with her phone. "He says I need to push harder if I want results." I didn't say much. But later that night, when she showed me a photo of the guy tattooed, smirking, all swagger and sinew and said, "This is what you should look like by next summer or I might trade you in," she laughed. I didn't. And maybe that's when the first real crack split through the drywall of our marriage. Not big enough to collapse the house. Not yet. But enough for the cold wind to start blowing through. Camille had always had a sharp tongue, but now it was dipped in venom. Little digs became daily fixtures. "Are you wearing that to dinner? My trainer says core strength is everything. You know, that thing you lost in '03. I tried laughing it off at first. Hell, I even looked in the mirror one morning and sucked in my gut so hard I thought I was going to pull something. There I was, holding a toothbrush like a scalpel and inspecting crow's feet like I was mapping topography. It wasn't just the comments. It was the way she started pulling away. Conversations shortened. Eyes that used to meet mine across the breakfast table now flicked to her phone. She'd get texts and suddenly smile like she used to when I'd surprise her with tulips from the gas station. I wasn't stupid. I knew that smile. That wasn't an Amazon shipping notification. But you try telling yourself it's just your imagination. That it's nothing. You fight to believe the person lying beside you still sees you. Still wants you. One night, around 2 a.m., I couldn't sleep. I padded downstairs, cracked open a beer, and stood barefoot in the kitchen watching the fridge light flicker off the countertops like a lighthouse in a sea of doubt. I remember opening our wedding album. Something about the stillness made me want to see us before the cracks. Camille in her second-hand lace dress. Me with hair and hope. We were kids. Kids who swore we'd never stop dancing in the living room. And I realized then we hadn't danced in over a year. Maybe 2. I laughed, but it wasn't a happy laugh. More like the sound a balloon makes when it slowly deflates. "We used to be ballroom," I whispered to no one. "Now we're a 2-step away from calling it quits." I didn't want to admit it, but the unease in my stomach wasn't from bad tacos. It was dread. It was Camille's phone lighting up at midnight and her locking it before I could see the name. It was her perfume suddenly changing from the soft scent I bought her every birthday to something sharp and spicy I couldn't place. Still, I said nothing. I told myself I was overreacting. But the real punch came that Saturday afternoon. I just gotten home from the lot early, surprise in hand, a lopsided bouquet and a coupon for dinner at that Italian place she liked. I parked behind her car, noticed it was still warm. I figured maybe she just got back. I walked in the house. Quiet. Too quiet. And there it was. A man's hoodie draped over the kitchen chair. It wasn't mine. I stood there, staring at that hoodie like it was a loaded gun on the table. My brain did the math 1,000 times over, and every time, it came up short by one man's hoodie. Camille walked in from the hallway, barefoot, holding a half-eaten protein bar like it was the most normal thing in the world. "Oh," she said, blinking like I was the one who had caught her off guard. "You're home early." I glanced at the hoodie, then at her. "You have company?" I asked, voice like a taut piano string. She chuckled like I just asked if she joined a book club. No, it's Marcus's. My trainer. He must have left it here last time. You know how he always runs late, probably threw it on the chair and forgot. Your trainer makes house calls? Occasionally. Form corrections, meal planning, stuff like that. She waved her hand like it was all part of some master fitness plan I wasn't privy to. We've got a good rhythm going. Good rhythm. That landed like a punch. I walked past her without another word, straight to the sink, bouquet in hand. It was still in the plastic sleeve, a few petals already browning. I turned on the faucet, pretended I was rinsing it. Really, I just needed something to do with my hands before they shook loose from the weight of betrayal. Behind me, the sound of her footsteps faded as she walked upstairs. No explanation. No apology. Just silence. Dinner never happened. The next morning, I installed a GPS tracker on her phone. Nothing fancy, just a free app I'd read about in a late-night spiral of paranoia. Camille had left her phone charging in the kitchen while she showered. I had 3 minutes. I only needed 1. It felt wrong. It felt necessary. That week, I checked her location like it was the stock market. Every ping that said gym was a minor exhale. Every unfamiliar address felt like a spike of adrenaline straight to the chest. Wednesday evening, she texted she'd be staying late at the bookstore. But her phone showed she'd parked 2 blocks from a condo complex on the west side of town. Not even close to the campus. I waited. She didn't come home until after 10. Hair tousled. Lip gloss gone. Smelling like a cologne I didn't wear. You okay? I asked from the couch, pretending to scroll my phone. Yeah, she said, breezing past me. Long shift. Students don't read, but boy, they sure love asking questions. She smiled. I nodded. And in my chest, something that used to be hope turned to ash. That night, while she slept, I sat at the kitchen table with a bottle of bourbon and our wedding album again. The page with our first dance had a wine stain on it. From when? I don't know. But it looked right at home. I remembered something she said to me once, a long time ago, when we had just bought the house. We'd been eating frozen pizza on the floor because the furniture hadn't arrived yet. She looked at me and said, even if we have nothing, I want to grow old on this floor with you. Now, 15 years later, I couldn't even tell you what flavor of coffee she liked anymore. The worst part wasn't the hoodie. It wasn't the lies. It was realizing she'd stopped making memories with me and started making them with someone else. I didn't sleep that night. Just listened to the house settle and wondered how many times you could patch a sinking ship before you had to admit it was time to jump. In the morning, I made coffee. Hers, too. Just out of habit. She didn't drink it. The day started deceptively quiet. The sun rose over Crescent Hollow like it hadn't read the script. I was mid-sip on my coffee, mine, not hers, because I'd finally stopped making 2 when the doorbell rang. I opened the door to find an oversized roller suitcase, a bright orange cardigan, and a face I hadn't seen in 4 years but instantly recognized. Camille's mother, Bernice. Surprise! If stress had a scent, it was lilac perfume mixed with menthol cough drops. I blinked. Bernice. What brings you here? She brushed past me like she owned the deed. Oh, I just had to get out of the city. All that pollution, and the neighbors keep adopting hairless cats, makes me itch just thinking about it. Camille said I could stay for a little while. Camille, who hadn't mentioned this. Of course. She plopped her suitcase on the hardwood floor with a thud that sounded like a tomb ceiling shut. I'll just take the guest room. That mattress always did wonders for my lower back. Oh, and I hope you haven't switched to that nut milk nonsense. Real women need calcium, Nolan. Bernice didn't just talk. She broadcasted. Every sentence was a judgment disguised as a comment, every question a booby trap. She began circling the living room like a realtor with buyer's remorse. You still haven't painted that wall? And look at that baseboard, Nolan, honestly. What do you do with your time? My teeth clenched so hard I thought I heard enamel snap. Camille breezed in 10 minutes later with her usual what's the big deal shrug. Didn't I mention? She's staying a week. Or 2. Just to recharge. Recharge. Like we were an Airbnb for broken spirits and unsolicited opinions. It was a new kind of psychological warfare, cohabitating with the woman who once told me my posture was passable for a mechanic. I'm a car dealer, for the record. A successful one. Dinner was a farce. Camille cooked her version, which meant reheated lentil soup and half a bottle of wine. Bernice held court, regaling us with stories about her water aerobics instructor who might have a foot fetish. I tried to change the subject. How's your cat? Oh, dead, she said cheerfully. Got caught in the dryer. These things happen. I stared into my soup, unsure whether I'd heard that right. Camille didn't flinch. Either she was numb to it or she'd just stopped listening years ago. Later, after Bernice went upstairs to soak her feet and meditate, Camille and I found ourselves in the living room alone. She sat on the far end of the couch, scrolling through her phone. I looked over at her, and for a second, I almost forgot the lies. Almost. I miss us, I said quietly. She didn't look up. We're still us. Just different. Different, I echoed, swallowing the lump in my throat. Feels more like strangers who know where the spoons are. That got her attention. She glanced over. You always were dramatic. Yeah. Guess I still am. That's something, right? Her eyes lingered a moment, softening just enough to make me wonder if there was a flicker of warmth buried under the frost. Then her phone buzzed. And the moment was gone. She stood. I'm gonna check on Mom. I nodded. She left. The clock ticked like a metronome with nothing left to measure. And I sat there, staring at the dent she left in the cushion. Camille's body was still in this house. But her heart had already packed a suitcase. You ever hear your own voice during an argument and think, wow, that guy sounds unhinged? That was me. Saturday morning, mid-rant, holding a Swiffer like it was a sort of justice, yelling at Camille about something to do with laundry or betrayal. Honestly, it was all tangled together by then. You've washed his hoodie. His. That wasn't an accident. That was a welcome mat. Camille rolled her eyes with the deadpan precision of someone who knew exactly how far she could push before I'd snap. Nolan, it's just laundry. Not when you're fluffing and folding another man's scent. She sighed, turned back to her phone. I stood there, vibrating. The Swiffer trembled in my hands like a nervous baton. Now, for context, I'm not a fighter. I'm a middle-aged used car salesman who listens to talk radio and gets excited about Costco coupons. I once cried during a Folgers commercial. But something in me had snapped. Maybe it was the hoodie. Maybe it was the fact that Bernice was still here, judging my scrambled eggs like they were performance art. But I knew I was losing. Not just the fight. The war. I stormed out of the kitchen and into the garage, like a man with a plan. Spoiler, I had no plan. I stood there for 5 full minutes staring at a shelf of WD-40 and half-empty windshield washer fluid. Then I got in my truck, drove to a gas station, and sat in the parking lot watching pigeons fight over a granola bar. That's when it hit me, Camille wasn't just emotionally distant. She was gone. Not physically. But her eyes didn't light up anymore. Not even dim. Just off. And then, divine intervention arrived wearing Crocs and a name tag, Benny. The station attendant. "You good, man?" he asked, poking his head in the window. I blinked. "Yeah. Just watching pigeons fight over a Nature Valley bar. Makes you think." Benny nodded, completely unfazed. "Women trouble?" I laughed bitterly. "Marriage trouble. Which is like women trouble but with legal fees." He nodded again, deeply solemn, like a monk of marital misfortune. "My ex took the air fryer. I think about that every time I eat soggy fries." That made me chuckle. Maybe laugh. "Okay," I wheezed. I thanked Benny, bought a Snickers I didn't need, and drove home. That's when I saw it. Parked across the street, black sedan. Windows tinted. And Camille? Leaning in the passenger window, laughing. Laughing like I hadn't seen her laugh in months. Like her face had forgotten me but remembered him. I sat in the driveway, hands frozen on the wheel. When she walked back inside, I followed. "So," I said, "you just catching up with a friend?" She blinked, surprised. "What are you talking about?" "The guy. In the car." "Oh. Just someone from yoga. Dropping off supplements." "Supplements," I repeated. "What's that, code for hotel keys now?" Her jaw clenched. "Are you accusing me of something?" I stepped closer, heart pounding. "I don't know, Camille." "Should I be?" She stared at me longer than usual. "Then, maybe you should think about why you're even asking." I think I stopped breathing. Bernice chose that exact moment to enter. "You two should really see a couples therapist. Or separate bedrooms." Without looking, I said, "Bernice, please go do literally anything else." And to my surprise, she did. Camille crossed her arms. "You've been spying on me?" "No. I've been watching my wife fade out of our life like a ghost in yoga pants." She blinked. Said nothing. Then turned and walked away. I stood in the hallway, alone, clutching a Snickers like it was a lifeline. The fight was no longer just with her. It was with the part of myself that still hoped she might turn around and say, "I'm sorry." But she didn't. Camille and I didn't speak for 2 days. Well, she didn't speak. I muttered things at furniture and practiced one-liners in the bathroom mirror like I was prepping for a courtroom drama written by a bitter playwright with a caffeine addiction. Monday night, she finally broke the silence. We were in the kitchen. I was eating cold chili straight from the pot like a man who'd just given up on both dignity and dishware. "You know," she said, "for someone who works in sales, you're pretty bad at reading people." I looked up from my spoon, chili clinging to my chin like regret. "You're saying I missed the part where you replace love with protein shakes and side-eye?" She leaned on the counter. "I'm saying you stopped paying attention years ago. Before Marcus, before everything. You tuned out and expected me to be here waiting like some kind of decorative plant." I laughed. Not because it was funny, but because if I didn't laugh, I might have thrown the pot across the room. "Decorative? Camille, I asked you every day how you were. You said fine. I bought you those ugly ceramic hedgehogs you liked. You remember that? They were possums." "Right. Ceramic possums. Which I bought. With real money. You think a few gift shop marsupials make up for emotional neglect?" I stood, waving the ladle like a weaponized comma. "Neglect? Camille, I paid for your yoga, your kombucha habit, and the hot tub you swore would help your chakras but mostly just made the backyard smell like wet socks." Silence. Then she said, quietly, "It was never about the stuff, Nolan." I dropped the ladle into the pot. It splashed like a dying fish. Right then, Bernice entered. Again. In a floral robe, with curlers like antennae. "Is this about the sex?" I turned to her, dead-eyed. "Bernice, if you don't leave this kitchen in 5 seconds, I will shove a ceramic possum into the garbage disposal and tell Camille you did it." She shuffled out muttering something about Reiki and menopause. And that's when Camille laughed. Really laughed. Bent over, tear in her eye, laughed. The kind of laugh that reaches past anger and pokes the part of you that used to remember joy. "You're such a disaster," she said, wiping her eye. I agreed, sitting down. But I'm your disaster. Or I was. Maybe still am. Jury's out. She looked at me. Do you want to fix this? God, yes. She paused. Then let's start small. Dinner tomorrow. Somewhere that doesn't serve chili in a pot. Maybe conversation that doesn't involve hoodies or hippie beverages. I nodded. Deal. No ladles. No yoga slander. Maybe even a little dancing? Slow dancing? She smirked. Ballroom. If you remember the steps. I remember one, I said. Don't step on your foot and don't let go. It wasn't a fix. Not yet. But it was something. I went to bed that night feeling, for the first time in weeks, like I might not be entirely alone in this broken orbit. The story isn't over. I could feel it. Not in the fairy tale sense, but in the you still have to earn it sense. Because the past doesn't disappear. But sometimes, if you both squint hard enough, you can still see the future. The night we went out again, really went out, was a Wednesday. Midweek romance. I wore a button-down I hadn't touched in 2 years. Still smelled faintly like the back of my closet and missed opportunities. Camille wore a red dress. The same one from our 10th anniversary. Still fit. Still stunning. It knocked the wind out of me the second I saw her at the top of the stairs. I nearly forgot we were supposed to be fighting. We drove to a little Italian place on the edge of town, cloth napkins, violin music, the kind of place you'd propose in if you had the guts. Or something to apologize for. Dinner was good. Too good. Like a dream you suspect you'll wake up from halfway through dessert. I like this version of us, she said, swirling her wine. The one that talks without yelling. I raised my glass. To new versions. We laughed. We even flirted. She touched my arm and I didn't flinch. We reminisced about stupid fights from when we were young, like the time we didn't speak for 3 days because I forgot to buy almond milk. Imagine almost getting divorced over fake milk, she said, shaking her head. We were warriors, I replied. In the lactose-free trenches. But as we were leaving, my phone buzzed. It was my oldest son. One-word text. Call. I stepped outside. The air was colder than it should have been. Camille stayed behind to pay the bill. When I called, I heard his voice, tight, shaky. Dad, it's Grandma. My mother. His grandmother. The one who lived alone on that hill with her garden of roses and her stories about the war she wasn't old enough to fight in. She's gone. That word. Gone. A switch flipped in my chest, and everything in the world suddenly felt like it was falling backwards. I heard the rest, heart failure, peaceful, in her sleep. But it was all white noise after that. Camille came out a minute later, saw my face, and knew. She didn't say a word. Just reached out and pulled me into her arms, right there on the sidewalk, under the old neon sign of Carmine's Trattoria. And I broke. The kind of break you don't see coming. The kind that's been cracking beneath the surface for years until grief finally gives it permission to collapse. She held me. Tighter than she had in months. Like maybe this loss unlocked something neither of us knew how to say. That night, back home, she made us tea. Just like my mom used to. Camille didn't like tea. But she sat beside me and sipped it anyway. Later, as we lay in bed fully dressed, side by side, I said, you know she used to say we were the only couple she believed in? Camille turned to me. Then let's make her right. I nodded. And for the first time in a long time, I believed we might. But outside the window, a car idled too long on our street. And tomorrow, I'd find out something else. Something that would change everything again. The next morning started deceptively simple. I was pouring cereal, thinking about nothing and everything, when I saw it. That car. The same black sedan from the night before. Still idling. Same spot. A ghost that hadn't gotten the memo it was dead. I walked out to the porch like a man checking the weather but ready for a gunfight. A guy stepped out of the car. Slicked hair, 2 white teeth, cologne strong enough to colonize the atmosphere. He had the look of someone who called women babe and paid for dinner just so he could mention it twice. "Morning," he said, real casual. "You lost?" I replied, arms crossed, coffee in hand like a prop in a western. "Nope," he grinned. "Waiting for Camille." I blinked. Just once. Didn't flinch. Just said, "That right?" "She around?" he asked, like we were catching up at a barbecue instead of standing 10 feet from the wreckage of my dignity. Before I could answer, Camille opened the door behind me. "Oh my God, Leo, what are you doing here?" she said, a little too breathy, a little too surprised. "Wanted to see you. Thought I'd surprise you." Leo. The guy had a name. And apparently, nerve. I turned to Camille. "Friend from yoga? Kombucha supplier? Long lost brother?" "Nolan," she started, her eyes darting. "I can explain." I held up a hand. "Nope. Don't do that. Don't you dare pull the explain card. You don't get to rewrite the script while I'm still on stage." Leo stepped forward. "Hey, man, this has nothing to do with." I faced him. "You really want to finish that sentence?" He paused. Took a half step back. "Smart." Camille jumped in. "Nolan, it's not what you think." I laughed. Harder than I should have. "Oh, Camille. You've said that so many times you could trademark it." "Please," she said, lowering her voice. "It didn't mean anything." "That's the worst part," I replied. "You didn't even care enough to ruin something with meaning." Bernice chose that exact moment to open the curtain upstairs. Watching like it was the neighborhood soap opera. "Y'all want lemonade?" she shouted. "Or popcorn?" "Not now, Bernice." Camille and I yelled in unison. Leo looked back and forth between us, clearly rethinking life choices. "I'm out," he muttered, walking back to the car. Camille stood frozen. "You told me we were fixing things," I said, voice tight. "You told me we had a chance." "I wanted to believe it," she whispered. "I really did." "But you invited the lie back in," I said, shaking my head. "That's the difference between pain and betrayal. One you endure, the other you choose. And here's the twist." She started crying. Not soft tears. Ugly, messy, human sobs. And I almost took a step toward her. But I didn't. Because love doesn't mean stupidity. I turned and walked away. But as I reached the door, she said something that froze me in my tracks. "Nolan. I'm pregnant." I didn't turn around. Not yet. I just stood there, the morning sun cutting across the porch, and let the world tilt one more time. Some truths hit you like a freight train. Others? They arrive quiet. Like a breath before a storm. Pregnant. The word echoed in my skull like a fire alarm going off in an empty church. I didn't speak. Not at first. Just stood there, absorbing it like concrete in a downpour. I wanted to say something profound. Something that would pierce through the lies and land somewhere near the heart of whatever mess we were standing in. Instead, I turned around. Slowly. "You sure?" Camille nodded, arms folded, eyes red. "Leo's?" "I don't know." She said it like she was confessing to stealing office supplies, not unraveling the core of our entire universe. I sat down on the porch steps like a man who just learned gravity worked in reverse. You ever think about how many tiny decisions stack up like bricks until you realize you built a prison and locked yourself inside? I did. Right there on that step. I should have told her how I felt years ago. Should have danced with her more. Should have listened when her silences got longer. Should have picked flowers on Wednesdays just because. Should have noticed when she stopped wearing that necklace I got her for our anniversary. But I didn't. As the old saying goes, most men die of thirst with the well still in sight. I looked up at her. "You want me to say it's okay? That I'll raise the kid either way? That I forgive you?" She shook her head. "I want you to tell me who you really are, Nolan. Not the man who plays the victim. The man who stopped showing up long before Leo showed up." And there it was. The knife. And damn it, she wasn't wrong. See, the skeletons in my closet aren't flashy. I didn't cheat. I didn't lie. I didn't gamble away our savings. I just disappeared. A little at a time. Behind long hours. Behind routine. Behind comfort. I took her love and built a hammock out of it, and then acted surprised when it gave out. There's this quote I read once, something like, "The opposite of love isn't hate, it's indifference." I thought I was being stable. But I was just vanishing. I used to want to save this, I finally said. Now I just want to understand when I stopped being part of it. She knelt in front of me. Nolan. I don't know how we got here either. And maybe that's the saddest part. That two people can lose each other without ever meaning to. We didn't yell. We didn't throw things. We just sat there, on the porch of a life that used to feel like home, with a truth between us that couldn't be unspoken. I don't know if the baby's mine. I don't know what I'll do when I find out. But I do know this. Sometimes love doesn't break. It erodes. And I had helped dig the trench. It's funny how the end of something doesn't always feel like a crash. Sometimes, it's a stillness. Like the moment just after the storm passes, when everything's soaked and wrecked, but quiet. The test came back 2 weeks later. Not mine. I sat with that truth like it was a cup of scalding tea I didn't know how to put down. Camille cried. Apologized. Again and again. But some wounds don't bleed, they just hollow you out. We split. Quietly. No big showdown. No courtroom drama. Just a quiet divvying up of 2 decades. The house went to her. I took the truck, my clothes, and a photo of us from our first road trip, the one where she fell asleep with her head on my shoulder, and I didn't want the drive to end. Funny what you hold on to. I moved into a small place across town. It's nothing fancy, creaky floors, peeling paint, and a leaky faucet I still haven't fixed. But it's mine. And when I wake up, there's space in my chest I haven't felt in years. A quiet room where resentment used to live. People always say, time heals all wounds. That's a lie. Time doesn't heal, it just makes you tougher. What heals is honesty. Self-forgiveness. Saying out loud, yeah, I messed up. But I'm still here. Still trying. And I am. Some nights, I still dream about her. About what we used to be. And sometimes I wake up with a smile, because even pain, when it's behind you, can look like love. If you're reading this and you've been through it, been betrayed, broken, rebuilt, then you already know, healing isn't about going back. It's about becoming someone new, shaped by the fire, not destroyed by it. So here's what I wish for you. Don't wait to dance in the living room. Don't wait to say the thing that's been sitting on your chest for years. Don't mistake routine for devotion. And if someone loves you, really loves you, show up. Every day. Not perfectly. Just honestly. Because love doesn't die all at once. It dies in missed moments. In silence. In the space where I love you used to live. But life? Life can begin anywhere. Even at the end of a marriage. Especially there. Nolan.